Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Tuesday's edition, and we are broadcasting live from Irvine, California, bright and sunny Irvine. Happy to have you with us today. Happy to be back on my own show. I want to thank all my guest hosts who sort of covered for me while I was over in Asia, came back for one appearance, and then suffered the effects of flight. We'll get into that later. But anyhow, I'm back, feeling great. Tom Amenta, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you from the great Midwest. Good to talk to you today, my friend.
Good to talk to you too, Mark. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks a lot. You know, Tom, I was talking to you briefly before the show. It was really interesting. While I was over in Asia, it seemed like, I would get bits and pieces of news, and I could go on the internet and catch up with almost every issue was outside of economic issues were the culture wars. And I'm thinking, my God, my country's It is so divided. Everything is a culture war. Then I get back, go through a little bit of an injury, and then, we have all the issues pertaining to guns, Trump. It seems like, Tom, you can't turn on a television set without seeing Donald Trump somewhere related to something. I almost feel like it's Trump time every time I turn on a television set. And the only way you escape it is if you get on the internet where you control what you see. Tom, help me out with this. I mean, I was away for about 3 weeks. Back, I had a little bit of pain issues, folks. So, I'll tell you about that later. But again, Tom, am I sort of like from 30,000 feet encapsulating what's going on in this country right now?
Yeah, I think that you have a great handle on it. I mean, just because you and I are both economic guys, sort of at our core, it's amazing that when Disney does their earnings this week, one of the things that people are watching is what Bob Iger is going to say about his ongoing feud with DeSantis. I mean, that is going to be a shareholder talking point that could move the stock, and as big as Disney is, potentially move the market. I think that it's just absolutely crazy. And I agree with you, but this is something that you and I have talked about in the past when it comes to these culture wars and things like this. What we are now seeing in America, and this is what, as a centrist, just absolutely breaks my heart and drives me nuts, is we are seeing the polls of this country dominate everything so much. Like you and I were joking, like when we were like looking at like the last minute things we're going to go on with the show. MSNBC's top story right now, as we are going to this, is talking about how Kamala Harris is like Joe Biden's ace in the hole for the election. And then Fox News is talking about Biden having a bad encounter with a disabled Marine, right? Like, I mean, these stories, neither one of them have any real relevance on today's news. Are nothing burgers 10 years ago. Like if they would even make the website, and yet these are the largest. If you look on a mobile site, first stories that you are going to see on, the largest, left side of MSNBC, and then, to the right with Fox. Like, I mean, as much as I'm sometimes reticent to give CNN credit, at least their lead story is about the ghost gun decision and the surprising fact that, John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett came out along with the liberals to freeze the decision and send it back to the lower court. Like, that's at least news, right? And it's like when the instruments that are supposed to be newsworthy for either side, and this is me putting my PR and my press hat on, are giving you just this fluff, just these absolute nothings of real content, just this filler. I think it shows exactly what you're saying. I think that's a real problem in America. Like, we don't always have to agree. That's fine. We can have some of these even practitioners or contentious disagreements, cool, okay, but at least that's starting on the problem. But when we've gotten to the point where billion-dollar news sources are talking about, Kamala being like a value add to a campaign, or, Biden somehow being the worst human being on earth because he had a bad experience with a disabled Marine, we've really gone far afield to what the news is supposed to do. And it's heart-wrenching to me. Yeah, it's really disappointing.
I'm in your camp because, when I came back from Asia, I started to get back into somewhat of a sensible routine, if you will, on following up various sources for particularly not only doing our show, but just general information. And honest to God, I found myself, I'm saying, why do I even want to turn on a television set? Because it was literally, and again, I'm cutting across all from conservative to liberal.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything that I would look and say, what value is this? All I was hearing was commentary about what people actually thought of a particular news. And I almost said to myself, God, I need to go back 20 years where I just, at least on ABC, NBC, CBS evening news, 30-minute shows, there was mainly news and not commentary.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed on cable channels all across the spectrum, forget whether you're liberal or conservative, it's all commentary. It's not news. In other words, if you tell me, okay, we're gonna talk about polls where Trump is, okay, that's news. Or DeSantis is rebooting his campaign. Or we had this happen in this city. Or we got a heat wave here. Or President Biden's poll numbers are up, poll numbers are down. He made this decision. None of that. I mean, I'm saying, okay, the relevant news is, but Anheuser-Busch InBev stock is way down because of Bud Light. Okay, I get that. That's sort of a news story, and doesn't appear Bud Light learned anything from it. Okay, Target stock went down because of this. Okay, this culture war is this. And I'm sitting here saying, you know something? Most people in America fit into what I call the Tom Amenta middle. I mean, it's about it's maybe greater than 60%. It may even be 70%. And then there's this other 10% Republican Democrats' core beliefs. And then there's about 5% on the edges. Tom, almost every story I saw was geared toward the 5% on the edges, like transgender rights here, this right here. And I'm saying, what the heck? I said, 60 to 70% of the people sitting here looking at this stuff, no wonder they're saying, I don't want to see a repeat of Biden-Trump. And I'm looking at it going, all this is an effort for the left and the right to mobilize their sides and sell commercials. And I'm saying, what the hell is going on here?
Well, what's crazy about it is that this is old. This is 8-10 years ago, but they did an analysis on cable news networks, and then when you take away the commercial breaks, okay, from everything, you're left with roughly 42 to 46 minutes of programming. Let's go to the 46. What they were finding was that anywhere from 16 to 19 minutes was news stories. It was the explanation. It was this is what's going on, and then the rest of it was the commentary going through. But the A blocks, the top of everything, was always a relatively solid news piece. The B block usually had a pretty solid one, and then they generally got to a C. What you're seeing now is the commentary is leading. Is that you're seeing a 45-second intro? I randomly had, because I've been following the Trump federal, the documents case, and then now the new one for Jan 6 really closely, because I'm really interested, because they're just so radically different, and they're in such radically different areas. And it's like, I'll flip through the channels, and it's like, I'll never forget, like, it was top of the hour. It was Anderson Cooper right when he got on, and it was 45 seconds of setup, and it was like 9 minutes of a panel. And I'm like, this is crazy. So I flipped to the bottom of the hour with Fox News, and it was 15 seconds of, and Trump's been indicted. Let's go to our panel. And it's just like, there's no facts here. And this is a massive story. Like, really, like, it, for all the things you mentioned earlier, like, Trump's always been popular. Trump's always been a moneymaker for any news organization, whichever way you wanted to spin him, because he's just so prolific in his content. He's so controversial. He's just not afraid to say anything. Like, yeah, they've always made money off of him. That's fine. Right now, he is a huge story. You have someone who has 50 to 57%, depending on the poll that you have, of likely Republican voters. He is going to romp to the Republican. It's over. Like, I know it's early, and I hate to say, like, if three indictments haven't done it, and the fourth one is probably gonna happen in Georgia, isn't gonna matter, right? If it hasn't done it, and DeSantis is just falling on his face, like, this is over. He is going to at least have the nomination. Well, so you're going to have a nominated candidate with at least 3, probably 4 indictments, 2 of which are federal, right? Both of which, and Jack Smith is trying to go as fast as he humanly can. Like, one of the trials is already set for May, so it's going to happen before the election, unless something crazy goes on. And what if he's convicted? Now here's the scary thing. What if he's convicted and then he wins?
Well,
like, this has oxygen.
All right, so let's cut through the substance, because we're all about cutting through the BS and propaganda.
Right.
Let's talk about the substance behind these cases now.
Okay.
Trump's case in New York, I think, is weaker than weak. I don't, I think that's a politically motivated hit job. I don't think that's going to have one iota effect, regardless what happens in that case.
He's dead to rights on the misdemeanors. Like if you look at just the misdemeanors, there's no legal scholar that's like yeah, he's nailed. But the thing is, for a misdemeanor, no matter, I think it was like what, 30, you plead that out, you pay some big huge fine, and you go on probation. Right?
Even leftists aren't hanging their hat on that one.
No.
Now you got the documents case. Now, I spoke to an attorney prior to coming on the show today. Of all the cases, Tom, he feels the documents case has some teeth to it. Now, think about this, and this is the argument I made. Okay, it's going to be held in Florida. To get a conviction, again, he made this commentary too. A lot of people on the left and even center left think Trump has to prove he's innocent. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have to do anything, particularly on the January 6th charge. The documents case is a little more cut and dried, though. From what I've seen, I haven't seen everything, but there is some there. My personal view, and the attorney who I spoke to, his view is there is some potential liability there. That documents case, Tom, that may or may not be held by Q2 of 2024. It could be later in the year. The January 6th charge, and not one attorney, but multiple attorneys I've spoke to said that is very weak case. Trump literally doesn't have to do anything. And to prove that case and get 12 people to agree on that, Tom, in my view, and I am editorializing this, that is going to be a stretch.
So I'm going to go back to the documents case. I've been on the show. I've said that unless you were Trump or Biden, how many times the normal person walked out in handcuffs immediately, right? Like he's dead. It's over. If it was just the judge, two lawyers arguing it, and the judge, he's dead. He's done. Like I don't care if it's Eileen Cannon, who the past couple of days is actually making Jack Smith defend that some of the evidence in this trial is coming from a DC grand jury rather than the Florida grand jury. And if for these last 4 charges, and she conceivably could throw out that other stuff, which would be crazy, at least from my friends that are also like my lawyer friends, because I'm like, wait, what's going on here? They're like, listen, it would be unprecedented, but you've also got to remember that Cannon, did something so unprecedented by appointing the special master way back at the beginning of all of this, to the point where, like, when the appellate court struck her down 3-0 and basically called her a moron, and as politely as legal terms as you can, 2 of those people were also Trump appointees. So I don't want to hear about the politics of that one. Like, she whiffed hard. She has a very, very favorable interpretation of the law for Donald Trump. She is the absolute best case judge scenario that he could get, which is what blows my mind on the other side, where he's screaming about Chutkin, who, if you look at her jurisprudence, you look at her rulings, she's very pro-defendant. If there's a tie, it always goes to the defendant, not the prosecutor. Now, yes, she's been very harsh on convicted sentences for convicted Jan 6 people, but you got to get to the conviction. You got to get all the way there. So it's like, to hear him say this, it's like, I really don't want to hear it. Okay, like when you really look at what a judge can and can't do, and you realize she's been more than fair to defendants through her entire career, but it's Donald Trump. He wants a million candidates. He doesn't want anyone even close to Chutkin. Fine. I question in Florida. I don't care how much Eileen Cannon puts her thumb on the scales, which she potentially could, and I think that her interpretation of the law is helping him with questioning this grand jury in DC stuff. It's going to come down to the jury, and that's where it's going to get wild. You got to go 12-0 on that case. Now, look, again, I have said this and I will say it again. He is guilty, period. I've handled classified documents, okay? What he had, right, and what is going on. And with that, this is a classified document where you've got him on audio, and you're going to have, if 3 people go and go, yep, he showed us a classified document, it's over. It should be over, okay? It should be over. Take the politics out of it. I'm not talking about the sentencing. I am asking guilty or not guilty. He's guilty. Okay. Period.
You're
I don't
making
hear
the
it.
argument if his name was Joe Smith.
Right, he's done. He's pleading. They pleaded out 9 months ago,
Right.
because they know that they're just going to get crushed.
Yeah, but
It's
if Joe
Donald.
Smith pleaded it out, he's still not going to jail, likely. Some type of.
Yeah, he is. Oh, yeah, but for classified for TSSCI like that, no, he's 100% going to jail.
Okay,
No, like that.
all right,
That's the
okay.
gravity of the documents that they are talking about. Okay, like again, the New York thing. Let's take that back.
It was
Joe
high
Smith
level.
isn't
It was
going-
very high
Yeah,
level
yeah,
stuff.
it was very, very top of the top. We don't ever want this getting out.
Right.
Type stuff. So no, Joe Smith is
Point
going to jail.
conceded. Point
Right.
conceded.
Right. I want to, because I mean, the U.S. likes to plead, right? If you've got money or means and you can plead out, generally that's what we do. No, not in this case. They're going to jail. It would probably be a reduced sentence compared to what Smith's going to try and nail him for. Fair, but no, they're going to jail. On the Jan 6th side, I don't understand that with sort of the clarity and like the experience. But one of the things that was explained to me by my friend who was a legal scholar is that the disruption of basically civil rights, it's all tied to Pence. If Mike Pence gets on the stand, which they're expecting him to be called, and outlines all the things that Trump did, which, by the way, he's done a lot of this in his book publicly already.
Did that Trump?
All right, I mean, look, he's going to get on the stand. Like, he's already put enough of this in his book where if he testifies, you do have some idea of which way he's going to go. Okay. Mm-hmm. What was explained to me is that that's sort of the linchpin of the case, because based on what he said in the book, what has been released from the 45-page filing of the charges, it would seem there to meet the jurisprudence where a guilty verdict is reasonable. Which, going back to the difference between DC and Florida, and this is why Trump wants to get out of there so much, DC is not going to be nearly as favorable of a jury pool, right?
No, of course not.
It's not, unlike Florida. And so that to me is ultimately, I think this is what this is going to come down to. Is I think it's going to come down to the juries. Like whatever the judges do or do not, whatever is accepted or admitted is or is not. It would, this is someone who I understand as a constitutional law scholar, by the way. So like, I believe him when he says, look, if Pence says everything that's out publicly on the stand and is walked through by a practiced, well prepared prosecutor who's prepped him for the cross-ex, it probably should stick. Now the other stuff let
me counterpoint you a little bit here. Again, right. Donald Trump, this is one thing that I think people on the center left and the left don't get. Donald Trump doesn't have to prove he's innocent.
Right.
The burden of proof is squarely on the he can do nothing and say, wait a minute, free speech, this is my opinion. But again, Pence's testimony will be key. I totally agree with you on there.
Right.
So,
and that's where the free speech argument would absolutely break down.
Let me go down a crazy path with you. Okay, and I only want to spend about a minute on it.
Okay.
Because we could do hours on this.
I know. That's why I was chuckling. I'm like, we'll see.
Okay. We're only going to talk about it just 1 minute.
All right.
What if Mike Pence did not have the backbone, the character, the history? I mean, we know who Mike Pence is. Mm-hmm. What if Mike Pence, forget the name, what if the vice president was a Trump crony? Where would this country be right now if
you want my honest to God answer?
Yeah.
I think that one of his aides is on record in that indictment, and I believe that this was said. If they led with it in the indictment, that's always like we can prove it and please come at us type stuff. They hold a lot back. When they're like, that's what the Insurrection Act is for. What I really think would have come down to Milley. It would have come down to Milley, and it would have come down to the tone that he set as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staffs. It would have been the heads of the branches, and it would have come down to senior military leadership of would they stand up against it or not. Like, look, Trump lost the election. He lost it. The fact that so many people still don't want to grant is the most frustrating thing to me on earth. Okay. Like, we're
2.5 years in. We have a new president. Okay.
Right. He lost. But in that moment, with all of that up in the air, then no, it would have come down to military leadership. And the thing is, I know the tone that Milley would have set. He's already made that very clear. He would have been like, "No, screw you."
All right, I got to hold you because in just a minute, we can do a whole show on.
But that rabbit hole is scary when you think about how thin that line is, right?
Right,
and I think that's the other thing.
Now, let me fast forward, okay? All right, so now let's back to not the hypothetical, but the reality. The reality is this, and you said it earlier in the show. Despite 3 indictments, one of which is purely garbage, one has some teeth, and one may have some teeth. And there's one potential coming in Georgia.
Right.
The fact is, and we cut through the BS on this, the fact is Trump has gotten stronger, not weaker. Okay, yes. Steve Bannon said it, but a lot of Republicans, those are, as Joe Friday, I like to quote, just the facts, ma'am, he's gotten stronger. Yes. You can argue Vivek Ramaswamy has had a little bit of a bump. Tim Scott, maybe a little bit of a bump. DeSantis, a little bit of a fall. The fact of the matter is, in virtually every state, Trump's leading by 30. So
at least
30. So again, I never want to say an election's over before the first vote's been cast. I'm not going to go there because, again, things happen. But at this point in the game, Tom, it does appear likely that we're headed for a Trump-Biden rematch, despite the fact fully 70% of the country does not want to see that.
Yeah.
But on the Republican side, as you correctly said, 50 to 57% of Republicans do want Trump to represent him. Now I'm going to go down this path. In polling, and look, folks, we're skeptical of polling, but in virtually every poll, it shows the race between former President Trump and current President Biden, plus or minus 2 or 3 points either way.
Margin of error for all of it.
All of it. A handful of polls have shown Trump leading outside the margin. But again, as one commentator on one network correctly said, and I agreed with him 100%, I don't remember it was a liberal or conservative, the race is going to come down to 8 or 9 states. You and I have talked about it. It's not a national election. It's going to be these 8 or 9 states. It's good. It was Reince Priebus was talking about it. And he was talking about it on Fox News. And it's going to come down to precincts, people, the micro-targeting. I mean, Tom, my point is, with all of this, and 70% not wanting Trump Biden, if it turns out to that, this election could go either way. Okay. Yeah. Now, since it's a 50-50 swing, and again, I know we're not talking about no labels and Joe Manchin and Sinema and whatnot, but assuming it's going to be either President Trump or President Biden. And boy, it's going to infuriate half the country, whoever loses. But assuming it's one of the two, if Trump wins, are all these legal issues over because Trump pardons himself?
Yes. Well, it's not even if he pardons himself or not. It's like, so there's 2 ways. If a trial happens and if he is convicted in that trial prior to him becoming president, that is, can't he pardon himself? That's going right to the Supreme Court. That is on like the freight train of speed. I mean, that's the bullet train to the Supreme Court. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I could prognosticate how I think that one was going to go if you want to go there, but like, that's exactly where that's going. And that's it. Like, that will be the decision. If he wins and it hasn't happened, and this is the thing that really, I don't know how to put this, would piss me off. He'll squash it. He will take over the Department of Justice and he'll just kill everything because he's the president of the United States. And I'm sorry, but that's not right. Okay. The charges have been brought. There seems to be a case. At least the 2 federal ones. Now, Georgia, or again, the super weak case up in New York, maybe, but like the federal ones are done. And it's
real simple. I'll give you the answer. He'll either pardon himself, or if Trump wins, it's likely going to be a Republican Congress with him, more than likely.
Right.
Then they'll expunge it. I mean, again, I'm sort of Dr. Realville here. One of those 2 is not going to happen. So, but the reason, Tom, again, I'm speculating on this, but I'm really not, because these outcomes are like staring us, just like you're staring at a light bulb. I mean,
so So let me ask you this, Mark: is that actually democratic? Is that actually the democratic process playing out, or is
Under
that someone who?
the answer under our Constitution is yes. I'll tell you
I don't
why.
know.
I will tell you why. Again, we have rules in place. Now, the one caveat to that is the bullet train to the Supreme Court. Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, like, if you're going to tell me that the dude who gets convicted, but suddenly happens to be in the one job in America that can get him off just because he decides to get himself off, I would have fought you tooth and nail on that one.
You may have fought me tooth and nail on it, but constitutionally, he does have a right to the pardon power. And Congress can expunge a case.
Okay.
But again,
This is where I'm going to get super politically poli-sci nerdy because I've got that degree and say these are the differences where most Americans misunderstand between a democracy, which is the term we often use, which is the question I put forth, and a constitutional republic. Am I going to argue you purely by the exceptions to policy and the rules required to a constitutional republic of what we're talking about? No, absolutely I'm not. You're right, even if it's the most letter technical parliamentary procedure definition of law. And that's how far we've had to go to get there. But you are. But a democracy, what we are trying to be is a country where the voice of the people is supposed to matter, where the checks and balances of our government are supposed to matter, what the founding fathers intended, right? Then the answer is no. And
of course the answer is no.
I get what you're saying. But it's but this is my problem going all the way back to what we talked about with the far left and the far right and this increasing disconnect. If John Fetterman was unfit for office, and you and I both agreed he should have bounced, right? And it had nothing to do with his politics, everything to do with him having a stroke and being literally propped up. I mean,
literally held up. Yeah, literally.
Right. Okay. But he was the bad guy to the right, But now because Trump is the good guy, with all of these clouds hanging over his head, with all of these things that are happening, is he an actually fit candidate? And I would argue strenuously no. And this is my problem. He's not a good candidate. It has nothing to do with how I feel about him. And look, I'm an absolute non-Trump person, never Trump at this point. I've been very clear about that. But if you're going to strip it all away, if you're really going to look at the content of this person's character and what is supposed, what the founding fathers intended and gave guidance to, he's unfit. He's an unfit candidate, and this is my biggest concern with America right now.
Let me take it a step further, Tom. And I'm going to really infuriate you as a centrist. All right. Okay. Not only I'm going to put my constitutional republic on one hat and the democracy on the other. Let me throw this scenario out to you to really infuriate you. Okay. Donald Trump wins the election.
Okay.
Joe Biden crushes him in the popular vote.
Right.
Okay.
Loses the Electoral College. Totally plausible.
The third party candidate may or may not take some votes in any particular state, but clearly the third party candidate cost, in this example, Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to have, in a democracy, Joe Biden got the most votes by far.
Right.
He lost the Electoral College to Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And now you have a person who won the election via Electoral College, which Democrats hate, and got fewer votes, and is now pardoning himself and or others, and will likely have his case expunged.
So I'll go back.
What happens in that scenario?
So I'll go back to the third party thing to start. I was living in North Carolina when Trump beat Hillary, and I voted third party. I voted Gary Johnson because I thought they both sucked. It was, as I said to all my friends, I'm like, just because one of them's a D- and one of them is an F, don't mean I need to say that one of them's a passing grade. They're not. They're both awful. And so I voted third party, and he lost North Carolina she lost North Carolina by about 20,000 votes. Yeah. And I believe there's 34,000 votes for Gary Johnson in that state. And I have a very, very liberal, way over to the left, family member who to this day will not let it go. I'm the great evil because if we had Hillary, we would have avoided. I am essentially the person who elected Donald Trump. To which I say, in that scenario, the third party versus the other two, I bathe in all of your bitter, salty tears. For anyone who wants to tell me that on either side of the aisle, screw you. It's my vote. Okay,
Right.
like, period. Like, to start off, like, because the other thing could happen too, right? Like, if it's a right leaning third party, they could strip away enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, either
Right.
one's in play. It just
This
depends on what the planks are.
this consensus is
So,
going to take away from Biden. It's
right.
just not factual.
I mean, yeah. So it's like, so for me, like, oh my, please cry me rivers. I will go swimming in it. All right. I can't stand that. That's just so antithetical to anything that this country was founded on.
But Tom,
The electro-
aren't there millions of people like you who, if it's Biden or Trump, they will vote for a third party candidate?
I think it depends on the candidate, and I think that it depends on how. So let me put it this way: if Ross Perot, okay, if the 2024 version of Ross Perot, okay, moneyed, charismatic, good communicator, it has juice, like, is actually making both sides of the aisle nervous. If that candidate exists in 2024, both sides better be worried because they have a chance. I really believe that. I don't know who that candidate would be. Maybe The Rock, and I'm not even kidding. Like, if Dwayne The Rock Johnson jumped in, he whoops them both. It has to be that candidate. It's not enough to be a third party. It's not enough for centrists like me to say, oh, well, for me personally, it's definitely enough because I can't stand either side of the aisle for so many reasons. But the average person is going to hold their nose and go one way or the other because they want their vote to matter. But if you can get someone where they think that third party is going to matter, there's never been a riper time, I would argue, in the United States since maybe the fallout of the Reconstructionist politics post-Civil War for someone to really jump in and to really grab this. I mean, even Theodore Roosevelt, when he did the Bull Moose Party, couldn't make it happen, right? And he had been a former president, and he got some real juice. Like, he got some real traction. He still didn't get anywhere near what was required to win. It's even worse in American politics right now, and I think that that person would be a real chance, but it has to be a candidate that the majority, the sort of politically uneducated, and I don't mean that as a slam to America, but the average American just isn't politically literate, that the politically illiterate would see as someone who could win and do the job. But it's in play. It's theoretically possible, which most years you don't say. But this year, oh, no, absolutely. It's a possibility.
So let me ask you this question. We only got a couple minutes left. I know we've carried over, but this topic's fascinating. It really is.
Right.
Literally, in the current environment that we're operating, it overwhelms everything. I mean, we could talk a little bit about the economy and banks being downgraded. We'll save that for another show. But let me ask you this question. Okay, you see where the state of affairs is right now on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Two questions. What could derail Trump, who's sitting there 57%? And then question number two, what could derail Biden, who is sitting there with a 45 to 50 point lead over his nearest rival?
Yeah. I'm not trying to be macabre. I'm not trying to be dark because I'm going to answer Biden first. Like, if Joe Biden suffers some sort of, either he dies or some sort of cataclysmic health thing because of his age, that's what derails Biden. Again, please understand, I'm not trying to be,
no, I understand.
I'm just saying, yes, the question, I don't see anything else that's going to derail Biden. He's the sitting president. He's got the numbers. It is a historical precedent for both parties that if the guy wants to rerun, they're going to let him unless it's Nixon because they.
So you basically say none of this Hunter Biden stuff is going to stick.
No,
okay.
No, okay. It's just because the other thing is that whatever. Let's say the absolute worst case scenario of Hunter Biden, which hasn't gotten nearly the press of Trump. You think Biden's going to bow out to the guy that he thinks is even there's no way. So that's what I see for Biden. For Trump, I think that it's a little murkier. I think. So one of the things that in Georgia that people are really watching is it's a possibility that she might use a RICO statute because the RICO laws in Georgia are extremely, they're much broader than the federal law. And so if she can make the RICO statute stick, and then she has not just Fulton County, which is where she is, but she has basically anything that she can tie to that criminal conspiracy. If the legal people on the far right look at that case and they go, it's real, right? and if she can get the bullet train to a trial. Okay. Now, these are two big things. I would wonder if the money, if that's what breaks the levee for the money supporting Trump. Because the one thing that I see that's really going to wreck him is running out of funding, because he's spending so much of the campaign contributions that he's getting
On lawyers.
On lawyers. And even if he wanted to self-fund himself, which, by the way, he has never done, just so we're clear, billionaire or not, he's never done it. He doesn't have the juice. If he loses, I mean, there are some Republican billionaires that have said, "Yo, we will sit this one out if it's Trump, or we will support someone else if they somehow make it." To me, it turns into the money. Like, where I can see Trump losing is even if he gets the nomination, right? If enough of the money goes away from him and enough of the money just pulls back and says, "We are sitting this one out," that's how I see Trump just running out of steam for the general election, regardless of any of this other stuff. And Biden can just outspend him, because if Biden can outspend him 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, right, in the general, and like you said earlier, can carpet bomb those places that are going to matter the most. We've seen in American politics that can be up to 15%.
True,
I
but
can give you up to 15%.
But I'll give you one counter to that. I believe if Trump is the nominee, a lot of Republicans who are never Trumpers, maybe excluding you, but never Trumpers or almost never Trumpers, they would still vote for Trump over Biden, because I just can't, I do not believe, I don't believe that would
yes.
I don't believe.
No, vote yes, I agree. My thing, though, is that the money, okay, the Peter Thiels of this world, although he's not on that, okay, they look at presidential candidates as investments.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And if they have decided that the investment isn't worth it, right? Even if they win, they still don't see ROI on their investment for that 4 years. That's what I'm talking about.
All right, now we got about a minute.
Not the voter, and
got about a minute left.
That matters.
Got about a minute or two left. Okay, one more hypothetical here. All right, we're going to talk economy just a minute. 3.5% unemployment, 180,000 jobs created last month. But there are signs, Tom, dollar weakening, banks downgrading, U.S. dollar downgraded, the debt downgraded. We spent $1 trillion in like a month, debt exploding.
Right.
There are people speculating that this long-awaited recession that people thought would happen in the third quarter, clearly not, clearly doesn't look like it's going to happen in the fourth quarter. But what if the economy does weaken, and in Q1 of 24, we start seeing recession? Maybe it's not soft landing. Do the Democrats keep Biden if we have a recession in 2024 and his poll numbers are cratering? If the Democratic Party bosses, we'll just call it that, see Trump with a 5 to 10 point lead, what happened? What will they do with Biden if Trump's up 5 to 10?
I think they're stuck with Biden at that point, because you're talking about Q1 of 2024. You can't pivot at that point. You look weak. You've got to ride the horse at that point. Now, if there's a sudden, like, call it before Christmas, anytime between now and Christmas, if that happens, do I think that you could get another horse in that race? Yeah, I do.
But not once the vote starts in Q1.
No, once the vote starts, once there's any level of momentum, because the other thing is that you have to have that person waiting in the wings, and you have to have some. They just don't have anybody.
Yeah,
like,
and it's not the esteemed vice president.
You just don't have anybody that you could plug and play. There's not an Obama personality, for example. Like, before Obama ran, everybody knew that dude was going to take a shot at it at some point. He was a rock star of the Democratic Party. Quickly and fast, and everyone saw it coming, right? There's no one. JFK was the same way. I mean, forget his dad for a second. Like, there are people that have historically had a level of capture of the imagination that you just knew they were waiting their turn. There's no one that's just waiting their turn right now in the Democratic Party right now. And if you don't have that, you can't just flip the switch if you're looking at it like it's going wrong. Because honestly, if they had that person, I think they'd already be feeling him out. I think they'd already be pushing him. I think they'd already be trying to see, maybe we can get off this 80-year-old guy.
So,
they don't have him.
In Tom Amenta's opinion, the die is cast. We are going to see Trump Biden.
Yes.
And there's not a whole lot can be done. Tom, I gotta stop it there. But you know what? There was a ton of topics we could have covered. We didn't get to today. But I think we drilled down to what's on the topic of a lot of people's mind. What are they thinking about? This This is what America's thinking about right now.
It is.
And we'll talk about economics and other stuff on our next one. Tom, again, great seeing you again. Thanks for joining me today, and it's always a pleasure. From left, right, and center, the opinions are what counts.
Love hanging out with you, buddy.
Okay.
Glad you're back.
All right, great. Folks, be back on Thursday. Feeling much better now. Everything's getting better. Things will be good. And just like we did today, we're going to cut through all the propaganda, give it to you straight. Look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for listening. Catch you in a couple days.